All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another HR Heretics segment. Today, we're going to talk about the empty suit executive. And what this is a piece by my friend, Tyler Hogge. Tyler was a VP of product at Wealthfront, who's the head of product at Divvy, and he's now a venture partner at Pelion. I think this is actually a seminal piece, Kelly, and I want to read a couple of lines for people to understand what Tyler believes is an empty suit executive. So he leads off by saying there's a certain type of startup executive that I've developed an allergy to. It's what he calls the empty suit executive. These are the types of leaders who are above the work, who want to manage the work, and who scoff at the idea of doing the work themselves. He refers to these people as seeking status, specifically high status. And there's a couple of things that he mentions. I'll just read a few of these bullets, which I thought were really interesting. He said the empty suit executive doesn't really talk to customers directly. They believe they are above selling and that it's the revenue org's job to hit the number. When there's a massive bug, the empty suit executive drafts a mealy-mouthed mass email to give some half-ass explanation. When there's churn, the empty suit exec thinks about it abstractly as a trend on a slide. The empty suit exec attends a lot of conferences and sits on a lot of panels. The empty suit exec doesn't know how to handle in-office conflicts, so they often run to HR and outsource hard conversations. They don't speak or write like a human. They adopt corporate robot speak. And then he goes, the empty suit is a fake. And then he goes on to say, we all have a little empty suit in us. A good goal, be less of an empty suit. Don't be above any of the work. Be a real leader. What's your take, Kelly?
Yeah, my first take, to be honest, was no one wears suits anymore. So the suit thing was interesting. That's my first take. My first reaction, everyone, is this is exactly the reason why people dislike managers and dislike corporations. I know it says executive, but this is where you get all the jokes in the Office Space, Silicon Valley series. This is the joke. And this is why folks make fun of those leaders, because it's the TPS reports. It's not getting stuff done. And I thought it was, nothing new here, but this, in my opinion, is the main reason why people don't like management.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, a couple things that I was thinking of when I read this. The first is that there was a story at DoorDash. We were probably like 75 employees. It was like most of us worked weekends. I was like taking my first weekend off. We were on a Napa bus with 50 of my friends. And I get a Slack from Tony that our order placer thing went down. So that was actually one of the ways we were scaling, like calling an order. So it was like a robot would call the restaurant. And it went down. And Tony's Slack said, drop everything you're doing. This is on Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. I'm in Napa, like 3 or 4 glasses of wine deep. Drop everything that you're doing and start calling orders in. And I remember at that point in time being like, this is such bullshit. Like, what are we doing here? What is going on? And as I've reflected on that, it's been crazy. It's like almost been 10 years. That was the empty suit inside of me. And I love how Tyler does this. If everyone should follow Tyler, by the way, his writing is incredible. I love the way that he structures his thinking. But one of his tactics is he's never punching down. He's never saying like, this is someone else. He's like actually like viewing things with inside him. And I actually, there's a couple of these things in here that I was like, shit, I definitely used to do this, or this is an area that I'm trying to work on. And to your point, Kelly, I think there's a lot of people who, this is where the joke comes from, to your point. It's like managers and execs who don't actually do the work are dying.
Yeah.
And if you're a real IC and you're actually doing the work and you're doing more than your manager, how can you not resent them? And how can everyone in the company look at you who is that empty suit and have any respect for you? And so this is why we're seeing this trend, as we've talked about a number of times on our show. Meta's cutting out middle managers. The ratio of managers to employees is getting employees to managers is getting much larger. There's a pushback on these people who don't do actual work, who don't roll up their sleeves. And there is no longer this like, oh, I fly around at 70,000 feet and I operate from the ivory tower all day long and that's how I get shit done. I think it's dead. And I think Tyler is calling it out, as we've done a number of times on our show.
Yeah, I had on my list that those layers are getting cut out. And what you said, I think, is what I often said throughout my years is, don't ask your team to do things that you wouldn't do yourself. Roll up your sleeves and model this stuff, do the work with them, and get out there. And I don't think that there's going to be a lot of room anymore for empty suit executives. I don't think at the best early stage founder-led companies there was ever any room. Like,
Right.
we just talked about this. Founders and empty suit executives, they don't mix. Like, it is like usually big time organ rejection, because the things that those folks bring in to these founder-led companies, org structure, roles, process, building an empire, all these things that are just best practices, all these things are allergic to these founders. So I think that's where you're seeing a lot of clashes, and that's where a lot of venture, led founders are allergic to hiring big executives from large public tech companies. There's like a reason for that. And we've talked about the fact that if you are an empty suit executive in a large public tech company, it used to be easy to be that way. Rest and vest, fly around, kiss babies and smile and wave. We talked about it. Layers are being reduced. Work is being looked at. And then the marketability of those folks. We talked about this with the layoffs. If you're an empty suit executive at Google for the last 12 years, how are you making sure that you're out there, getting
You're
hired,
on the cut
getting
list.
looked at, right? So, and my story, being in large public tech companies for 10 years, which I will never talk badly of, it was amazing. The communities, the learning, the scale, those things are all wonderful things. I would go back one day, maybe. And it's really important not to let those environments turn you in to an empty suit executive, because it's going to be real tough. And it's hard to do that when you're in those companies, right? It's slower, it's safe. It's very easy to get lazy and atrophy, is what I'm telling you.
Yeah. Look, I think we're in a moment right now to where, just in general, venture-backed tech companies, early-stage venture-backed tech companies are a bellwether for where the world is moving, right? Go back to 2007, 2008, right? Uber, Airbnb, it was the app economy, and the app economy was coming. And you see it first in venture-backed tech. Now we're seeing it in AI. Well, the other thing that we see with venture-backed tech is how to actually construct and run a company. And what we're seeing is companies are a lot leaner. There's fewer managers, there's fewer execs, and there's a hell of a lot more doers. And I think that is a bellwether for what is happening across the entire economy right now. Is in the era of AI, we are going to need fewer people. And so the people that we actually need and want are going to be the people that are rolling up their sleeves and flying around at 50,000 feet, able to do the strategy work. So I think that's one piece for me. I think the other piece for me is, I've said this before, the worst advice I ever got was fake it till you make it. It's terrible advice because it's inauthentic. And it turns out like one piece of what Tyler is saying is like, this person doesn't actually do real work. The other piece of what he's saying is this person's a fraud. And they wear this suit every day, and you don't actually know who's like underneath the suit. You don't know who the human is underneath the thing. They just act like a robot. And I've told that story about me in the past, which resonated deeply.
Not you anymore. It's not you anymore.
But that's what I'm getting at is there is a little bit of the empty suit exec in each of us.
Hey everyone, we'll be right back in a moment after a word from our sponsors.
Real talk, most talent leaders haven't yet cracked how to leverage AI for meaningful impact on their hiring processes and business goals. But the leaders who are effectively using AI to transform their recruiting team's efficiency and quality use MetaView. MetaView is the AI assistant for the interview process. Their AI records and transcribes hiring conversations, like intakes, interviews, and debriefs, then provides perfectly summarized notes of everything that was discussed. That means your people can focus on creating human connections with candidates during calls and save time on the busy work of cleaning up notes after every interview. But it's so much more than just a time saver, because perfect notes means perfect data. For every candidate and every pipeline, hiring teams can make confident, informed decisions, and talent leaders can finally take control of the interview process. Join forward-thinking talent leaders at high-performing organizations like Brex, HelloFresh, and Quora, and check out MetaView. Head over to metaview.ai/heretics to talk to one of MetaView's product experts, or get started for free. You'll be up, running, and AI-enabled in minutes.
I think if you read this and you don't identify with any of it, I would really caution you to look deeper, because each of us has these traits. Each of us have seen other people or wanted to look after other models and be like, oh, they have it all figured out. Oh, they're so rich or they're so powerful. I would love that. And see them operating at super high levels. They don't see the nitty gritty. They don't see the grimy stuff that person had to do. And I think we're entering an era to where grimy is about to be sexy. And that's what I love about this, because that's where I think the puck is going.
Yeah. The other thing, and you're right, we all have it in us. Like, again, it's human nature to fall prey to some of this stuff and get a little lazy, and your environment's a big deal around that. But the other reason why it's really important to look into this is that it's just not inspiring to be that person. You know what I mean? If you're listening and you had talent follow you to 2, 3, 4 companies, and you're known for building these teams that are like, you're not an empty suit executive. Do you know what I mean? It's just, we all know those execs that we worked with or know about, and we all kind of eye roll, to your point about being inauthentic and just, again, uninspiring. So that's the other thing that I think you're going to see is brand and followers and modeling this to make people want to work with you and keep going.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say is, I've been using this line too, is that comparison is the thief of joy. And I think it's really easy to compare and look over the fence at your neighbor's yard or at your friend's yard. I'm like, oh, like they have all these things figured out. And it really turns out that unless you're actually living in that world, you have no idea the challenges and hardships that people have gone through. I think one of the biggest issues with our media today is they have this notion of overnight success, which is completely untrue. And if you look at a lot of these founders, and I've been lucky enough to work with 2 of them who have been insanely successful, the best ones are always the ones that are like grinding, doing the hard shit. And so I would just say to everybody, like, we're entering this new world. And if you want to be successful in this new world, the way to do it is to get to the lowest level of detail. The way to do it is to work your ass off. The way to do it is to just roll up those sleeves and get into the dirt. And so I love this post by Tyler. Tyler, this was like one of your best ones. I think this is a seminal post. And I hope every one of our listeners has an opportunity to read it.
Yeah. And just to be empathetic on the other side of it, this wasn't always this way. You know what I mean? Like when 30 years ago, it was a great thing to be a suit, to fly around and be important and make money and go to conferences. Like, I just want to put it out there that a lot of folks were taught that. And I hope as we go through this next chapter, which I'm excited about, that people are more open about the things you just mentioned. That people talk about the grime and the hardships and why this is a good thing and their stories. Because a lot of times it was like, ignore, I'm big, rich, and powerful, and I have jets. So that's why I'm empathetic, is that Mad Men, all these things, it was like a great thing. It was celebrated almost.
Yeah, it's such a really good point. That's exactly right. My take is we've run that experiment and the data is in and it doesn't work.
I agree.
Yeah. And I think that we've talked about this on the show too, but it's really easy to like go work at a monopoly business or a business that has such a deep moat. And you can't look at someone who's operating in that business and apply those learnings to your business unless they're analogous. Because when you work in one of those places, you can get away with a lot of stupid shit. And I think that's the case now as things have become incredibly competitive and are continuing to be more competitive in the era of AI. I just don't think that stuff is going to fly any longer. I mean, Google's search business is about to it's taken a hit right now. Perplexity, if you guys aren't using perplexity.ai every day, I have news. Google search doesn't work as good as Perplexity. And so even the monopoly businesses that we've been used to for the last 20 years, everything is under siege. And I think if you're going to survive, this is how you got to operate in the new world.
Yep.
So read the article. Let us know what you guys think.
Thanks, all.
HR Heretics is a podcast from Turpentine, the network behind Econ 102, Moment of Zen, and Turpentine VC. Subscribe, 5 stars, share it on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. All the things.